I'd never seen a shark before. It felt like we stared eye to eye, and finally my survival instincts kicked in and I thought, I've seen the crocodile hunter. I've seen Shark Week, I'll jab it in the eyeball. But I couldn't move my hand. And I looked down, and as I pulled my hand, I could see the teeth tearing the flesh of my hand. And so I thought, left hand. And I reached over, but it was an inch away from my finger and I couldn't reach the eye. So I grabbed it by the nose and tried to lever it off me, but all that did was push the teeth of the lower jaw deeper into my leg. And that's when the pain started to kick in. Now, when a bull shark grabs something, its lower jaw latches on first, and then the top jaw comes in, and as it shakes its head, the teeth work in unison to saw through whatever it grabs. So as it took me underwater and started shaking me, it was sawing through my body. The most excruciating thing I've ever felt in my life, and all of the fight went out of me. I instantly realized that I was helpless. There was nothing I could do. I was drowning in agony, and I said to myself, I'm not going home today. I'm going to die right now. The one question that came into my mind, it wasn't like time slowed down and my life flashed before my eyes. It was the body and the mind is an amazing tool, and everything went into hyperdrive. I thought, am I ready to die? And I thought back on my life from where I started to what I'd achieved. And I thought, I've lived 10 lives in these 31 years. I have no regrets. I've done more than I probably even deserve. If I'm going to die, I'm good to go. And I let go. I felt like I was about to drift away, and the shark's teeth sawed through my body, ripped out my hamstring, and ripped off my hand so it wasn't attached to me anymore. My wetsuit made me buoyant, and I popped to the surface, and the tail splashed water in my face. And I thought, shit, I'm not dead. I better get out of here. Saw my safety boat, and I thought I've got to start swimming to that, but as soon as I took that first stroke, my hand was gone. My arm ended at the end of my wetsuit, so I thought my medical training kicked in, and I'm like, I got to keep that wound above my heart to stem the bleeding. So I'm swimming one hand, one leg, because I can't even feel my right leg. I don't know what's wrong with it, I just can't feel it. The guys in the safety boat said I was swimming through a pool of my own blood. They said when they got in close, they could actually taste it in the air. It was that thick. I didn't care. All I wanted to do was get back to the boat. I was expecting that shark to grab me by the leg at any second, but it didn't come. I just kept swimming, and eventually they got to me, pulled me out of the water, laid me flat in the boat, and just out of the sheer relief of not being eaten anymore, I relaxed, my eyes rolled back in my head, and I passed out. My mate Tomo sprung into action. His training taught him that I was going into cardiac arrest, and he needed to stimulate my heart, so he gave me what we refer to as a series of short, sharp jabs to the chest. And it worked. I woke up and I looked over and my hand was gone, freshly ripped off by a shark. And I looked up and Tomo was beating the shit out of me. And I just thought, today sucks. I could hear the engine of the boat go, so I knew we were headed towards the wharf, towards the chief, towards where the paramedics might come and get me. I could feel someone tugging on my leg, so I knew that they were fashioning a tourniquet above the wound. Out of what? I didn't know. We didn't even have a first aid kit. But as long as I could see Tomo's face, as long as I could hear his voice, I knew I was still alive. And so it's all I focused on, just laser-like focus, one task, do not die. And they got me to the pier, and my chief came down and he took control. And all the scientists were there and they couldn't stop the bleeding. The boat was an inch deep in my blood. I was nearly dead. My chief looked at my leg wound and located an artery that was squirting blood. So he grabbed the new guy again, Lockie. He said, Lockie, you've got to stop that bleeding. Now Lockie had to sit there for 10 minutes with his hand inside my leg, pinching closed a slippery, squirting artery. Something he said he never wants to do again. But he saved my life. And eventually the paramedics came and I got whisked off to hospital. And I had my leg for a week. When I woke up, I remember looking over and knowing my hand was gone. I'd processed that. Okay, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm very, literal person, but I could see my foot. That was the hardest thing. I could see it was there. I just couldn't feel it. And after that first week, the surgeon came in and he did exactly what I needed him to do. He didn't bullshit me, and he left the choice up to me. He said, Paul, you can keep your leg, but that wound is always going to be there. There's always going to be that chunk missing. We can cover it with a skin graft, but it's always going to be there. You'll walk with a limp. You'll never run again. Your fitness will suffer. Your motivation will suffer. Your happiness will suffer. It could catch fire, and you wouldn't even know because you can't feel it. He said, alternatively, we can have you amputated and walking or possibly even running within 12 months on a prosthetic. Now, I was so high on morphine and a bulb of ketamine that was permanently attached to my stomach, I looked him square in the face and I said, Doc, you can take my leg. Turn me into a Terminator. So I was really high. So usually when I go and do these presentations, I give the clients the option as to whether they want the gory version or the really gory version. Unfortunately, I like to do the very gory version, but I'm only going to give you the gory one today because I have actually had 58 people pass out in the audience. No, I'm not lying. People think I'm bullshitting. I'm not. 55 men. And the reason I show these isn't to gross people out and make them pass out. The reason I show these is because it's incredible what our bodies and our minds are capable of overcoming. And you can't fully appreciate, I get up here and say, I got bitten by a shark, my leg popped off, my hand popped off, and it really hurt. And you see these, and it becomes real. And it drives home how truly powerful we are. The first picture I'm going to show you is a photograph of what was left of my hand when I got to emergency. It looks like a little bit of Japanese noodles. If you do not like blood and guts though, please just go to a happy place. I'll let you know when it's all over. Don't be proud, okay? It's so hard to get the audience back when someone passes out. Everyone's like, oh, that was Jono. If you don't like blood and guts, don't look at this, okay? There's a picture of what was left of my hand. There's not much left. There was one finger, I think that's my pointer. I think that's all the tendons that are inside your hand. There's one thumb, but the thumb's inside out with the little meat patty. I don't know what that extra bit is. It's kind of like when you build something from IKEA. We need it. So there's nothing they could do to salvage that. They just cut it off at the skin, folded it over, and now my arm ends at the end of my forearm. My leg, however, was a totally different story. The shark had bitten all the way through my hamstring and almost surgically removed it. It had taken 25 centimeters of my sciatic nerve and chomped all the way to the bone, nearly severing my femoral artery. If it had even nicked that femoral artery, I would have bled out and died before I was even out of the water. So I am so very lucky. And I take these around and I show people and I go the oohs and ahs, and sometimes someone passes out. First time I showed this to my mum, all she had to say was, "Good bum." Like I said, I had the leg for a week. The problem with the leg surgery was if they removed above the wound, which was right up under my glute muscle here, I'd be a hip disarticulate amputee, which means you can't put a prosthetic socket on the remaining limb because there is none. And you have to swing the whole prosthetic from the hip. And that makes life really hard. So they wanted to salvage some of the limb somehow, and they came up with a new way to do it. What they did was they cut off my foot. This is where the gory photos were. You're lucky. It cut off my foot, sliced open the back of my calf muscle, peeled all that off the bone, removed that bone, removed the knee joint, removed the condyles off the end of my femur, and folded my calf muscle into a nice little patty cake. I ended up with 86 staples, 36 stitches, and those 2 drainage tubes embedded into my leg to absorb fluid as the leg healed. And I ended up pulling those 2 tubes out of my own leg, because after the nurses took out my catheter, there was no more nurses touching tubes into my body. There's a certain noise that you make as a man When a nurse pulls a tube out of your doodle. No man is supposed to make that noise. Gross. So I became the tube guy after that. Unfortunately, after the surgery, I went into a very, very bad way. The pain management team could not manage my pain. I went through 20 hours of agonizing torture where all I wanted to do was die. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 20 hours laying in my bed, rolling from side to side, bawling my eyes out, wishing to die. I prayed that the shark had killed me. It got so bad, Mum came to my bedside and I begged her to go and find me a gun so I could kill myself. She later told me that she walked up and down the street at the front of the hospital crying, just crushed for the fact that her son wanted to die. And then she went and got her nails done and felt heaps better. Such a weirdo. Fortunately, they did get that pain under control. What do I do now? I was terrified. I was looking down the barrel of losing my whole career, my whole identity, everything that I'd fought so hard to achieve. There's no way they're going to let me do my job again. They're not going to let me play with bombs. I look like I'm terrible at it. How would I do my job? How would I live my life? How would I be attracted to the opposite sex? All of these things went through my head, the pity, the stares, and am I going to have a wheelchair? It was such a complicated situation. But I hate complicated situations. Just too bloody complicated. I like things to be simple. I'm just a simple guy. I like simple decisions. And so that day, I decided to make a simple decision and ask myself a simple question. Something we get to do every single day. Whenever you want, you can ask yourself, what do I want? Do I want a good life or do I want a bad life? Pretty simple. Pretty sure everyone's going to want the good life. But where do you begin? I couldn't even get out of bed and go to the toilet by myself. What am I going to do? How? Where do I start? And I thought back to my military service. What made life so good? And I thought, well, the first thing we did every day, every single day as a soldier, as a clearance diver, is you get up, you go to work, you do PT. You train. That's how we start our day. And I thought, well, why would I break a good routine? And 2 days after I had my leg chopped off, the surgeon came into my hospital room and found me doing one-arm chin-ups on the bar above my bed. Obviously, he wasn't very impressed. Not as impressed as I was. But I didn't want to lay there overthinking the situation. Sometimes you just have to stop thinking and start taking action, especially when it's big and scary and unattainable in your mind. I decided that I had a big, impossible dream of going back to work as a clearance diver. That was the dream. And everyone said it was impossible. And it was too big. And so I made it smaller. I made small, easily achievable challenges and goals. Get up earlier, eat better, keep my fluids up. Little things, get off the drugs as fast as I can. I got home after 9 weeks in the hospital and I went straight into training every single day at the gym, trying to learn how to use this new body again. But having one hand and one leg can really throw out your bench press and squats. But the Army taught me a very important mantra back in the day. It stuck with me through my whole career. The mantra was improvise, adapt, and overcome. With that in my mind, there was nothing I couldn't achieve. It's a challenge and a question, and an answer all in one. Okay, I can't do push-ups. What am I going to do? Okay, I'll improvise. And I pulled in a bench, and I put my elbow on that bench, and I did push-ups like that. I can't hold a dumbbell. And we all know curls get the girls, so what am I going to do here? And so I looked on the internet, I used the internet. I didn't talk to a counselor, I didn't do rehab, I did everything myself. And I've got nothing against counselors, I think they're incredible, but I didn't want to talk about how I was feeling because I already knew how I was feeling. Shit. I just wanted to focus on what I needed to achieve. And the internet, the wealth of the world's knowledge within a few keystrokes was there. That was what I needed. It taught me that people run up mountains on one leg. Men climb mountains on their hands because they have no legs. What is the latest and greatest in prosthetic technology? What is going to be my tools to help me along? So when I didn't have the ability to hold a dumbbell, I used the internet again. I got onto Google and I found a lifting hook that the bodybuilders use for heavy deadlifts. And with that, I could put the strap around my forearm, the hook would hang down, I'd put a dumbbell in it, and I'd do curls like that. Or I could throw it up in the cables and do flies. If you don't have 2 legs for squats, does that mean you skip leg day? You never skip leg day. 1-legged squats all day long. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. And so after 6 months, I went to the Navy and I asked if I could go back to work. And they said, no. You cannot go to the diving teams. To be at the diving teams, you have to be deployable for war. I said, look, I understand that. I'm not as fleet on my feet as I once was. All my trigger fingers work at once. I'm probably going to be pretty terrible in a combat situation. But what I can do is teach. Why would you waste the millions of dollars you've invested in me? Why not let me pass that on to the next generation and inspire them? And so they thought about it and they ran me through a series of tests, and they had this huge gaggle of people there to judge me. And one day we all went down to the boat and we all had to spend a bit of time on there, and I jumped on the boat and then the physiotherapist fell over behind me. 4 weeks later I was driving the boat, teaching that first phase of clearance diving course, ship's divers, to these new, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed recruits. Impossible is a word that other people tell themselves so they don't have to get uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is where we grow. It is where we become the best versions of ourselves by forcing ourselves into struggle and overcoming that. You will never know what you're fully capable of unless you make yourself uncomfortable, and you will grow every time. Impossible is bullshit. Ever listen to anyone tell you that something is impossible in your life? You can do anything, whatever you want. The crazier, the better. And so these baby divers would come in for their first day, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, thinking, I'm going to be a big, bad clearance diver. Now get on the boat, and there I am. Half man, half mountain bike. They won't look at me. I think I know why. They're like, oh, shit, he's here. There's so much more chance of sharks coming now. I didn't help. You're going to be tough to be a clearance diver. So I'd send them on their missions. I wasn't allowed to use the diving equipment at that point, but they didn't say I couldn't breath hold dive. And so they'd be on the bottom, and I'd put on a mask and snorkel and a pair of fins, and I'd silently paddle down behind them, holding my breath, to sneak up on them and grab them by the leg, shake the shit. Later, they're like hosing down their brown wetsuits. It was a really interesting time of my life. Really hard, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So much good has come out of it, to the point I would not change a thing. Sounds weird, right? I got to get up in the morning and I put my leg on, I put my arm on. Learning the gift of giving without the expectation of receiving, that is a light in my soul. I never feel better than when I'm doing something for someone else that can't do anything back for me. And practicing happiness. Our emotions are no different to a physical movement. How do you learn to ride a bike? You practice. How do you learn your jobs? How do you become a better real estate agent? You practice, you practice, you practice. Our emotions are no different. You have to put in the hours of practicing routinely, just like training in the gym. I get up, I go work out. Every day, I practice my happiness. I look at the things that I love. I keep them close to my heart. I give without the expectation of receiving, and I have a great bloody life. And I wouldn't change it. Not for my hand and my leg back. It's too good. I've learned so much about the human spirit over the last bunch of years. And one of the greatest experiences I had was going to the Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Games down here in Camp Pendleton 2 years in a row, 2011, 2012. This is where we train for a week and then we compete for a week in things like track and field, archery, wheelchair basketball, seated volleyball. And I walked away with 4 golds for swimming, 2 silvers for shooting, both years. But the greatest reward I got was spending time with those incredible people. There was a guy there called Chucky, 35-year-old bloke. Survived Iraq, survived Afghanistan. Chucky came home and got a blood clot in his hips, lost both of his legs at the hips. 4 days later, he got a blood clot in his brain and he went blind. Chucky was out there competing in the 50 meters freestyle, blind with no legs. One of the guys that won a gold medal in archery didn't have any arms. He shot with his mouth. That is the strength of the human spirit. That is what we are all capable of. I've seen it in myself and I've seen it in so many other people. We can achieve far more than we give ourselves credit for. And we don't have to wait for those extenuating circumstances. We can do it whenever the hell we want. If we just make those simple changes, those simple choices, those practices of our emotional resilience and strength. I don't have PTSD. I don't know why. Maybe I'm broken, or maybe I'm just really happy. I don't know. But you would think that someone that went through this would be a little bit broken. I'm fine. Life's good. I don't beat myself up about it. I don't have long extended periods of sadness. One of the best things my friend taught me was don't feel bad about feeling bad. Feel bad. We're supposed to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. Feel bad, but don't let it ruin your week, your month, or your whole damn life. Feel bad. Identify why, and then fix it. Now, I don't share that with you to make you feel bad if you haven't been to the gym this week. But you should. I share that with you to show you what is truly impossible from wherever it is that you're beginning. We all sometimes have to start and work and build from the ground up. That doesn't mean anything. If you pour your heart and your soul into the things that you love, into the impossible dreams, they will come to fruition. You will grow. You will have a happier life. Happiness is found in adventure. This has just been an insane ride that I'm so happy I got to be a part of. And it taught me one of the most important things. Death is not scary. Take it from someone who has nearly died in the most horrible, of painful, terrifying, excruciating ways. Death isn't scary. But going to your deathbed with regrets and wishes that you had done more before, that is terrifying. Once we learn that we don't have to cling to this mortal coil and we are free to do whatever the hell we want, we practice that emotional resilience, the happiness, the gratefulness, the giving without the receiving. All of that good stuff we're taught as kids, remember? And then somewhere along the way we kind of lose it a little bit. There's just simple joy of being happy. It works. It's what took me from this guy in a hospital bed with one leg and one arm, wishing that I would die, to a guy that gets towed into a 10-foot wave. I don't know how to surf. That was the first time I'd ever done that. Throw himself out of a plane with $300,000 worth of Navy-bought prosthetics. I don't show the Navy this. I'm a little scared they'll take my limbs off me. If all else fails, don't forget to have a laugh. We all know how good it feels to fill ourselves so full of joy, we can't possibly contain it, and we have to burst out laughing. always fall back on that, even if you've got to laugh at yourself. Life is far too important to be taken seriously all of the time. Thank you very much.